And we're live, I believe. Oi pessoal, welcome to the 6th edition of the Brazil podcast. I am Sam Cowie, an independent journalist and radio producer from the UK, and I've lived in Rio de Janeiro for the past 2.5 years. I work freelance for a variety of international networks, including Deutsche Welle and FSRN, and occasionally The Guardian and the BBC. The Brazil podcast brings together foreign and domestic journalists for a weekly discussion, covering all of the biggest news from Brazil. This week's guests are Bruce Douglas, a former BBC Radio 4 editor, now freelancing from Rio for the BBC, Vice and Esquire. Hello, Bruce.
Hi, Sam.
Ben Taverner, a former BBC World Service reporter, now freelancing from Sao Paulo for the BBC, the Anadolu Agency and Al Jazeera. Hello, Ben.
Hi, Sam.
Leo Mercado, a film scholar who holds an MA in Communication and Culture and a PhD in Comparative Literature. His main areas of research include Brazilian cinema, carnival music in films, and film and literature. Leo is also a Brazil podcast regular, based in Rio de Janeiro. Hello, Leo.
Oi, Sam.
Welcome everybody to the sixth. Sorry, start again there. Welcome everybody to the 6th edition of the Brazil podcast. Our intro tune this week is Sepultura performing O Matador from the soundtrack of Lisbela e o Prisioneiro, a 2003 released Brazilian comedy. A Brazilian comedy released in 2003. Okay.
I want to hear it.
Yeah, we'll get us in the mood a little bit, right? You can stick it on if you fancy it. Okay. First off this week, we're going to discuss the exit of Joaquim Barbosa from his position as the head of Brazil's Supreme Court. Barbosa was the first black judge to gain a position at the Supreme Court. Last week, he announced that he was taking an early retirement due to personal reasons. Throughout his career, Barbosa gained a reputation for tackling corruption in Brazil. He is perhaps best known for overseeing the Mensalão trial. Mensalão was a vote-buying scheme in which congressional deputies received monthly payments. Mensalão was a vote-buying scheme in which congressional deputies received monthly payments to vote for legislation that favoured the ruling Workers' Party. Altogether, around 20 people were convicted. So guys, Barbosa was a very popular figure in Brazil. And why do you think that is? Bruce?
Well, I think the main reason was that he presided over the trial that, for the first time in Brazil, saw some very powerful people land in jail. I think there is a long history of impunity in Brazil, and there is a tradition of people with enough money and influence getting away, in some cases literally, with murder. And this case, the Mensalão case, this huge corruption scandal, which really, went to the heart of what a democracy is. If you can buy, if you can buy legislators' votes, then it really does question whether democracy is working at all. And he presided over this long-running trial. It went on, I think, for around about 8 years. And during the trial, he was prone to these long outbursts, occasionally even against his colleagues on the Supreme Court, but sometimes just really quite forcefully talking about how about some of the inequalities in justice that Brazilians face. And I think this meant that he gained a little bit of a cult following. I think the fact also that he was one of the few black Brazilians in positions of power, given that over half of Brazilians have some African ancestry, there are actually remarkably few black Brazilians in very prominent positions in the media or the judiciary or in politics. And I think all those things together really made him quite a cult figure. And he really was a cult figure. I was surprised last year at Carnival that there were even rubber masks going around of his face, so you could actually put on the mask of Joaquim Barbosa and dance in the streets here, which there can't be many Supreme Court presidents who've had their faces made in rubber.
Yeah, that's true. I saw that as well. Ben, what have you got to say about Joaquim Barbosa? Why do you think he was so popular?
Well, I think for many of those reasons, he was a champion of anti-corruption. He stood for a lot of what Brazilians were fighting for last year in those mass protests. Of course, he's been held up as an example of what Brazil's public school system can provide. I think that's often a little bit unfair, given he had the chance to travel and he wasn't from a particularly poor family. But I think obviously black Brazilians and those from Afro-Brazilians held him in very high esteem because he had managed to reach those high levels. If you look at the figures of employment in Brazil, then if you compare non-blacks and blacks, then people of black or mixed race background generally earn just 58% of what white Brazilians earn. So I think there's kind of an inspiration there that Brazilians can achieve what he can. And of course he was often known for standing around in court and pacing the court. He was a character, as Bruce said. He often didn't mince his words with his fellow judges, but actually interesting that he often paced the court and stood up because he had a back condition that meant that he couldn't sit around for long periods. And interesting also that his name came up recently in a lot of those Datafolha opinion polls when those surveyed were asked just to pick a name out of thin air of who would you vote for. The same opinion poll that had Lula picked from thin air, despite the fact that he said he's not running and going to be backing Dilma. Joaquim Barbosa was picked out, I think it was 14 or 15% of the time. So, that's a popular figure.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, absolutely. Leo, what have you got to say about Joaquim Barbosa?
I think one thing we have to say is that he was a personal choice from Presidente Lula. Lula chose him for reasons that are mostly merit, but at the same time he was seen as a political choice. He is the first black man to get a position in the Supreme Court. He is just someone that Lula is going to manipulate. And at the same time, he was the person years after that that was again co-opted by the Brazilian conservatives in a movement to understand that Joaquim Barbosa was the guy who fights corruption, which is a feature Brazilian politics always seems to reinstate. We had that already with President Collor. Collor was chosen by his amazing fight against corruption in his own state, Alagoas, and he was
impeached.
The first Brazilian impeached president. So that's the stuff that people have to understand about Brazil. Sometimes those things come as a change, a wind of change, and then they are transformed in political alliances or stuff like that. And each and every time, the truth seems to be a little far from those. How do you say that? The fact that the political spectrum seems to hold things like they are so far away from the conservative side of the liberal side, and stuff are most in the middle. I don't know if I was clear about that.
No, very clear, very clear. He was very popular amongst the upper middle classes, Barbosa, wasn't he? And he graced the cover of Veja magazine several times, I believe.
Yes, but then again, Veja was when Lula chose Barbosa, Veja was highly critical of him and also said that he used to beat his wife and stuff like that. So you see that those publishing magazines, they are always trying to find a way to hold some guy for something they try to stress.
Okay. Leo, you still there?
Yes.
Okay.
What,
Sorry, I thought we lost you.
What was that noise?
I don't know. It might have been me putting my drink down. Did anyone else hear a noise?
Oh yes, I heard that.
It sounded like somebody was underwater for a while.
Yes.
Or possibly activated some kind of time travel device.
I thought that my commentary was going down the toilet.
No. It felt fine. Okay, so
Shall we mention that he was nominated by Time magazine last year as one of the world's 100 top influential people?